Hi, Michelle. Hi, Dana. Do you think we're gonna get a quorum here or what?
Oh, well, the only one I know of that's out of town is Lynn.
Hmm.
So,
Is
uh,
Jim is Jim around? Oh,
I
he
thought he
shut.
was back. I know he was going to Portugal for a trip. I thought
Uh-huh.
he'd be back. I don't know. Um, and I know Patrick and Patty, both their sons play on football together. So,
They may be a little late.
and then they had the road race to this evening, so I know traffic wasn't unforgiving coming home tonight. Hey, Patty.
Okay.
It's like she's in her car.
You muted, Daddy.
Thank you. Yes, I'm in my car. I was saying hello to all of you.
You have football?
I have football.
You're a football mom.
And a football and a soccer mom. It's crazy. They need to develop some kind of a car service for, young boys. It'd make a killing.
Don't the livery services have something like for families that they can? I thought Uber and Lyft had something. I read somewhere. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think so.
Hey, Josie, you're mute.
I'm not feeling too well today, so I may go off camera.
That's okay. I'm definitely understand.
No. Do you have the flu that's going around?
Oh my God, I have much more than the flu. You don't want to hear the Josie health report, but
I'm sorry to hear that. That sounds awful.
and I had to fly a lot this week and next week, and it's just you get on an airplane, you can't breathe, your ears are just like it's awful. But anyway,
I hope you feel better.
Thank you. A lot of people are not well, but at least it's not COVID, right?
Yeah.
It's all
definitely.
relative.
Okay. All right. So let's see. For committee members, I have Michelle, Mark, Dana, Patty, and Josie. I think we have a quorum. So we'll get started. Good evening, everyone. The chair is calling the meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. Great to see everybody. I know it's been a little bit since we met, so glad to have everyone. I also want to welcome Dana Sheehan. He is a new member to the board, recently appointed by the Nahant Housing Authority, and will be representing them going forward in our meeting in our future discussions. Tonight, I wanted to spend some time going through the draft of the housing plan that was provided to us from MAPC. Hopefully folks have had some time to go through some of the sections I've asked people to cover first before going through obviously the rest of the report. What we'd like to do is really talk about those sections, talk about any proposed changes, recommendations. I did provide access to folks on Google Docs, so you could fill out, anything that we can share, because this is one of the things with the open meeting law. Obviously, it's difficult to socialize and communicate information. So this process I wanted to use is similar to what FinCom has used, where they, share information using Google Docs. People can see their markups and changes or questions, and then, you know, we can bring that all back to the next meeting. At the next meeting, what I'd like to do also is, have a vote to accept the draft of the plan as long as everyone is in agreement after we get through our discussions, and then we will send it to the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board. We've got a few timeline things to also make sure that we accomplish as well. The Planning Board, while they're meeting next week, they meet every 2 weeks. So we want to get this plan out to them next week, because then that will be after their meeting, and then they won't be meeting again until October 17th. And then we need to get scheduled this joint meeting with the Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen. It'll be either late October or early November. Afterwards, we'll have the meeting with both joint boards. There'll be a vote from both boards to adopt the plan, and then authorize to send it to the state. So they'll review it, and then we will publish the plan and make it available to the public. So let me stop there, see if there's any initial questions before I'll put up the plan and we can walk through it. But wanted to see if anyone had any thoughts or comments. Welcome, Michael. I see you, and Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got some, I guess, procedural thing. First of all, Dana, welcome aboard. Glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us with this endeavor. So tonight, Michelle, I've been going through the draft report. I've been taking my notes. I haven't been through the whole thing right yet, but I hope to get a response to you by Monday or Tuesday at the latest. And I'm wondering if we'd be better served tonight if we just went through sort of the recommendations of the plan, rather than duplicate our efforts, because we are like reviewing them as we speak. But I noticed that there were a lot of participants, non-members, that are on today, and so it might be helpful for them to begin to see what some of the recommendations are.
Yeah.
And then the committee members can respond with the spreadsheet that you provided us with our comments for our next meeting.
Yep, that's it. That's exactly the thought process I was having as well. So we can jump right to the recommendations and just talk about those. There are a couple open questions within the draft that I also wanted to make sure that we cover. And then, you know, certainly if there's, you know, things that folks want to, you know, think about, come back, and then, you know, do it, submit it in writing, that's okay as well. But definitely, we want to, you know, go through those recommendations. So let me flip to that section. Got it. Okay. Okay, hopefully folks can see my screen. Okay, this is the section on development opportunities. And if I'm going too fast, stop me, please. Don't feel free to interject. The first section was their analysis, and you know, reflecting back to the developmental constraints in the prior chapter. They did highlight the multifamily zoning for MBTA communities, which we know is the next deliverable in the work that's before the committee. They also had talked about our public input, which is important as well. So the community engagements, the survey, and then the opportunities for potential development.
Michelle, excuse me. This is
Yep.
Dana. Could you please make your screen bigger? You know,
I was
use
going to
the.
do that. I was going to do that. Okay, so we've looked at this before in prior meetings. Each of the letters of the different locations that are proposed housing sites. And so remember, this is all a plan. It's strategic. It's a proposal to the state to give them an indication of what Nahant would like to do. There's nothing definitive, anything that has to be, that would result in a project still would have to go through another level of review. We'd have to go to town meeting. There's still funding that needs to be obtained. So I just want to make sure, remind folks kind of some of the additional efforts that would still need to happen should anything, develop, shovels in the ground, however you want to call it.
Let
Okay.
me just clarify the sequence of things though. So we're going to vet this thing and then recommend it to the planning board and to the selectmen. And after that, after they bless it or take whatever favorable action they take on it, it gets submitted to the state for its review and screening. Is that correct?
That's correct. Now, as
Okay.
part of that process, the state they come back with questions. They may have some follow-up items. They may ask us to think about something differently. And, we'll have to work with MAPC should anything like that come up and prepare for a response. Don't know, not sure if it's happened with other communities. I just know from my experience when I've worked on large deliverables that are going up to some type of outside review, state or something like that, it's gonna, sometimes those things will happen, and that I would consider that standard. Thank you, Dana. I see your hands up. You had a question?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for letting me parachute into your committee at this late date. I have been following along with some of the meetings, so been trying to keep up with what's going on based on, me being on the housing authority. So in terms of process, how about has it been considered that we as a committee vote on individual sites here and then, finalize what these development opportunity sites are going to be? Some of them, as we all know, are controversial. For example, the church, and that might be a way to move forward with a more focused list of development opportunities.
So in prior discussions that we've had, Dana, in our meetings, we talked through significantly about each of those locations. We had very detailed discussions and, very difference of opinions about, for example, the church and stuff. But these are just housing opportunities, right? We need to demonstrate an ability to show that we have different locations in town that could possibly help address the affordable housing needs that are occurring in the state. We didn't get a sense from our collaborative effort that we needed to really do a hands up, hands down vote on each site. I think where we are in the process right now, given that we are, towards the very end of this deliverable, I don't know if that's something we want to put forward. I'm welcome to other opinions on the committee. For myself, I feel like we've had a lot of dialogue on these sites, and certainly, think we're in a good state right now, but I welcome any other opinions as well. Josie, I see your hand. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is going to go to the state, and my view, having done this in other places, is that there should be more versus less. I think having the maximum amount of flexibility not only shows the state that we are open to, as whatever happens going forward, but more importantly, that we show the townspeople of Nahant that we are not pushing one agenda or another. So there were two other sites that were discussed. Whether the town people choose to vote on them eventually or not doesn't matter. The inclusion of them shows that we are not concentrating these kinds of development opportunities in sections, but have really thought about every possible opportunity. One of them, and forgive me, but I couldn't find it, we talked about the mixed-use commercial space, and I didn't see that in the recommendation. The other one, and I know it's controversial and it'll probably not go, but it doesn't matter. It just shows a really wide breadth of truly looking at what's available, was potentially the community center. And I didn't see either one. So from my point of view, I would highly recommend that we include more properties versus less. because then the townspeople and the state know that it's really about what private development funding is going to be available, and that we are not biased to one neighborhood versus the other.
Yeah, Josie, I think I agree with you in principle. I do believe, Michelle, that the committee has approved these opportunity sites in our prior meetings. And I think what Josie is talking about in the mixed use areas of sort of downtown, that was more related to the 3A, not the
It was.
Okay.
the opportunity site.
It was related to 3A.
We should make clear that this diagram, you know, it's easy to get confused about 40B and 3A.
Right.
So what we're looking at here is meant to deal with 40B as opposed to 3A. Is that right?
Correct. This is all about 40B.
Okay, so Josie, were your comments directed to the
40B.
MBT?
Yeah. Yep. No, I think if we're going to develop, and you know, I'm not a fan of developing. Okay. I'm not. I really wanted to see, you know, going to the state with a request for asking for more affordable vouchers being given to our town, given that it was such a huge burden. I didn't see that in the recommendations at all. Was a little disappointed in that, but don't know why that wasn't explored more by the consultant. I felt that was a big miss on their part.
That was
We certainly-
addressed. That was addressed. It was specifically addressed, and vouchers does not advance any of our interests with regard to either 40B or 3A. So they may be valuable for, if you will, the general thrust of increasing affordable housing, but A, somebody's got to pay for it, probably the town, and B, it does not advance the ball toward our goals under 3A or 40B.
So the goals are build, not try to use the inventory or expand the inventory so that Nahanters, well, I'm not going to get into it. I think I've already discussed it the last 3 times and 4 times. Anyway, my recommendation is more rather than less when we go to the state. Thank you.
Yeah, the only ones here, Michelle, and I know we had a discussion with MAPC about this, is the Spring Road and Emerald Road properties. You know, I'm not quite sure we're looking at any expansion there, at least I'm not. Certainly looking at improvement of the developments that we currently have for affordable housing there and veterans housing. And I guess I'm not quite sure. Perhaps we should include them on an opportunity sites. That's all I'm thinking about.
Right. So there was some other dialogue that happened in speaking with the consultants. I speak to them on a biweekly basis with Tony. We do a checkpoint meeting as part of the project. We definitely heard citizens' feedback, and it was definitely good feedback about those locations. But after speaking a little bit more about some of the events occurring on over there, that is an operational unit. That's an operational situation that is with the Nahant Housing Authority that needs to be directed back to them. These, you know, a written complaints, an inquiry. I don't know what I defer to the Nahant Housing with how the process runs, but that's where that stands. Those locations are opportunities for modernization and to be expanded. It's not going to happen now, obviously, but we should include them. They should be opportunity sites, and to demonstrate to the state that we do have existing locations that we're looking to modernize. You know, one resident raised back, you know, we just spent money and on those, putting new windows, new siding, you know, they needed it. Clearly they needed it. And so I think if we show the state, you know, with even existing properties, there's opportunities to make changes. I think that's still demonstrating our thought process and looking at all variable opportunities for us.
I don't think anyone would disagree that those sites need further attention. The real question is whether doing that, in other words, in a way that does not increase the number of units, is within our ambit as opposed to getting into the business of the housing authority. Obviously, the housing authority's got to approve any action to enhance the existing condition, and they'll, they've got that on their plate. I don't know that we've got any authority to stick our oar into that if we're not using those as areas that we're recommending for increased number of units.
Yeah, so if, the housing authority wants to explore expanding those and has other avenues and means to get state or federal funding to modernize those buildings, having them in the plan makes sense, right? It's up to the housing authority to also, participate in this process and help us achieve, the goals that we want to increasing affordable housing. Okay, Dana, yes.
Hi, thanks again, Michelle. I just wanted to ask the rest of the committee if they'd like to weigh in on voting for the individual housing development opportunity sites at this stage. Not necessarily just to rule them out. Josephine made some good comments about adding perhaps more at some point, but as a starting point, I'd just like to see if there's anybody else on the committee that would like to comment on that.
I think we already have done that, Dana.
Okay.
I think we've already voted to accept these as opportunity sites.
Well, I'd like to comment on it if you'd allow me to.
Sure, Patrick.
Yeah, so I really think we already agreed to remove the church site. I don't know why that's on there. I think I'm also disappointed to see that our mixed use area is not, potentially an opportunity site. I think, that's a gap in this plan. And, in light of the vote of town meeting to fully fund the plan to demolish and create single family houses on the Coast Guard site that aren't, subsidized housing, I don't feel like we can go forward with the Coast Guard site on this plan. At least as is, at least 9 of those houses appear to be spoken for at this point. So
I beg to
think
differ.
the plan isn't ready.
I beg to differ with regard to the Coast Guard locations. The vote was to approve money to complete the demolition and remediation of those sites. It did not specify exactly what the selectmen were going to do with the sites in terms of disposition. There's the expectation that the money that it can be realized from selling them will be used to retire the notes. That does not mean that they're all going to be sold for private development.
I mean, the math just doesn't check on that. I mean, we've got over $3 million in debt, and it's going to take all 9 of those houses, it seems, to pay that back, sold at full market value. I really don't see this as an opportunity site any longer. There's certainly an opportunity to talk about that and reevaluate that, but I do not see, and I think you're quite frankly wrong on that. We have a vote of town meeting, we have a plan, and Mark said, last meeting the Board of Selectmen and the town were moving forward in good faith on that plan, and they just asked for another $1 million to execute that plan. So I think it would be remiss of us to just ignore the town meeting vote and go forward as if it didn't happen.
The vote did not specify that the lots were all to be sold. They left the power in the hands of the selectmen to decide that. And
I don't think that's true.
Well, you can read the resolution. That was the vote.
Yeah, Patrick, I think we've seen some dialogue back and forth on this outside of this meeting. And I recall that vote was to authorize the Board of Selectmen to subdivide that property and sell them as individual house lots. Now, authorize has different, obviously, definitions to people. Something could change and the Board of Selectmen could come back to town meeting and saying, we have this change. We'd like to, instead of selling them, right, we're going to sell some, but we're coming back to town meeting because we're going to develop some others, right? So even if they sell some, they're still within in the requirements of what that article was approved of.
Yeah, and I think I was on board with that interpretation up until there was a town meeting vote to authorize an additional $1 million
I
to
know.
actually execute the plan. I really just don't see any wiggle room here. You know, we've got a plan, we've got funding for that plan, and an overwhelming vote of town meeting to execute on that plan. So I really just don't see how this committee can just go back on that. I was against going forward. You know, I argued against going forward with this plan, but you know, we've got to vote, and town meeting has spoken, and I just don't see this being a viable plan now. And really, there's just the opportunity seems like it's about 3 houses in my opinion, and that's about it. And I think we could talk about that, but to consider the entire Coast Guard site now an opportunity site,
But that's not what we're considering in the plan. If you read the area, if you read that section of the plan, it says to sell some to pay off the note and look to develop the remaining available land that I believe is Gotta Drive.
Yeah, so here's the
location.
part I have. The problem I have with that is that you've got 12 houses identified as an opportunity site. Which ones are we going to sell off, and which one are the opportunity?
That's
Yeah,
up to the selectmen.
Yeah, I don't think we need to decide that right now, but
Yeah,
they're
we
all,
can't
Right.
decide that.
all 12 of them have the potential of being an opportunity site. I think the intent of the 2021 town meeting was to stop kicking this can down the road and to pay off the note. And certainly, as you correctly said, Patrick, I intend in doing that as a member of the Board of Selectmen. But I think there is a win-win scenario here that both goals could be accomplished. And I think it's very possible. So I would recommend that we keep them as opportunity sites. I'm not sure which ones are going to fall where. There's some, you know, I think that the intent of the town meeting was to pay off the notes, in my opinion.
Part of the flexibility that the selectmen need is to respond to the market, because when these sites are readied for sale, no one knows what the developers or those who desire to look at the property, which ones they will be looking for, which parcels will be most desirous. And you want to sell the ones that are seen as most desirable, and the market will tell us which ones get left over. And that leaves the selectmen with the opportunity to deal with what happens once they've paid off the note. And I also should say that the GLAM analysis points out that to achieve the requirements of the GLAM analysis in terms of percentage of the town's land area to get us to safe harbor under 40B requires something like 3.5 acres, and that the
5
Greystone.
acres, I think it's 5 or 6 acres total.
Well,
No,
I just read the thing.
Excuse me, I think it's 2.8 to be exact.
Well, in any event, the Greystone property, from what I read today, from the answers that came from the consultant, if we develop the Greystone property, we will be a huge amount of the way to achieving safe harbor in 40B. And the remaining property we would need to develop to get over the 40B threshold might easily be satisfied by the leftover parcels on the Coast Guard site. So it seems to me to be unwise to remove the flexibility that currently exists once the selectmen pay the note by selling the most desirable properties out of the Coast Guard site.
And I think
Well,
we have
it
to.
certainly doesn't remove any flexibility to be on or off this plan. You know, maybe give them political backing to present something at town meeting, which contravenes the previous plans.
It does not.
But you know, I think our job is not done here. We're speculating on how many acres here and there. I think we need to get to the GLAM threshold. I mean, I think we need to identify the parcels that will be put into that you either transfer to the housing authority or, you know, I think that would be the best option here.
Well, our
And
glam analysis indicates it's 2.8 acres. So let me
2.8 acres.
yes.
Addition.
I thought I saw something over 3 in the answers to the questions that were in Michelle's email that came from the consultant. Now, I could have it wrong, and this is not difficult to determine.
Well,
but it's-
Mike, I'm referring to the consultant that we hired to do our glam analysis, which was Stantec, not MAPC. So if
Okay.
you're looking at the MAPC information, that may conflict with Stantec's, but Stantec's analysis, I believe, was 2.8 acres.
Okay.
And
Well-
let's remember that any of this stuff that we're talking about here is going to end up with a town meeting vote up or down. So you know, the final say is going to be town meeting.
Right, well, except there's one other factor, and that is that if we do the glam analysis, I think we want to leave ourselves the ability to not be too stingy about it, because my understanding from reading some materials that were developed in other towns is that, or maybe it was in something that came from the state, is that no community has been successful at achieving safe harbor by use of the percentage of land area formula. So we want to be careful not to scrimp and not to underestimate, if you will, the amount of land area we need to develop, so that we can be bloody sure that we don't end up with a state agency that tells us that thanks for all you did, but it's not enough.
Okay, Dana, you've been patiently waiting.
Thanks, everybody. You know, it's a very interesting discussion that we've had here the last few minutes. I think we could all agree that we want to get a plan that will be supported by the vast majority of the people in Nahant, as well as our constituents in the state that have to approve it. So my initial thought was, okay, so let's vote on the individual properties. We've had a lot of discussion here tonight, and probably before I was ever on this committee. So I'd like to make a motion tonight that we vote on the individual properties, and maybe we can take off some of those controversial properties, like the church, that, you know, would offend some people in town, and you know, maybe add others like Josephine said. So can I hear a second on my motion?
Seconded.
Let me just, Michelle, this may be a procedural thing, but I have to review the minutes again, but I thought we have already approved these opportunity sites.
So we came to a consensus and approved the opportunity sites, but we did not do a formal committee vote.
Okay.
And
So,
Michelle,
yeah,
I don't think
motion-
that's true, Michelle. We had consensus to remove the church site, and it's still on there. So
Yes,
I think that's a problem.
Okay, so let's move forward now with what we have. We have a motion to vote on each individual site. From Dana, Patrick is second. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys, I have to, you know, take notes here too. So I start individually. So Mark,
What are we voting on now?
we are voting to review each individual site and vote on each individual site individually. So, and then afterwards, we'll go through each site alphabetically, review and challenge, and vote whether to include or remove.
And Michelle, can I also add that, you know, if somebody wants to nominate a site that's not on here now, like Josephine mentioned, they could do that as well.
I think that could probably be handled as a separate motion, possibly,
Yes.
right?
I would consider that a separate motion. Let's focus on the ones that we have before us.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to do a roll call vote on the motion that's before us right now. I'll restate it again. The motion is to vote on each individual property. It was a motion by Dana. It was second by Patrick. The chair is doing a roll call vote. I'll start with Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
No,
Josie? Josie might be on mute, I'm sorry. Thumbs up, yes. Okay. Patrick,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
and the chair. The chair is yes. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yes, and 1 no. Did I get everybody? I did, okay. All right, so then what we'll do is, we have the map in front of us. I'm just gonna scroll down just a little bit to show the chart. What I'd like to do is go through each of these in alphabetical order, A through I. And then at the end, if there's any new sites to be discussed or added, we'll take that as a separate motion. Do we agree with that process?
Agreed.
Okay. So site A. Site A is the Housing Authority at 194 194 Nahant Road. This site consists of the main property as well as approximately 3 acres on Greystone Road.
I think they're
With that,
separate. think they're sep-
they're
I think
they're,
they're listed separately, aren't they?
are they listed separately? Greystone, oh
Yeah.
yes, 50, okay. So let's talk about the Housing Authority, 194 Nahant Road. So that is one site where we can modernize and expand in that location. And that would allow us, you know, along with some of the adjoining site as well, to consider expanding development there. Any comments or feedback on site A?
So this is the site of the existing housing authority property, correct? That fronts on
Right.
Nahant Road.
Right, so let me just,
Michelle, a question of the site itself. There's a little bit of land across the road from Greystone. Does that include within the housing authority?
town-owned land.
Okay, so it's part of
So
the housing authority.
that's in parcel A as opposed to parcel
Uh,
B, correct?
So
Right.
let me clarify that. It's town-owned land. I can't tell you whether the housing authority has management oversight on that.
It does
Okay,
not.
it
It
does
does
not.
looks
not.
like it's parking or something, but yeah, okay,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
fine with
possible.
that. Okay.
Okay, it's 1.46 acres. It's one parcel in 2 parts. It is developed.
So it's
There are no
it's
physical constraints.
the triangular section
Yeah,
that is across Greystone Road.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's the isosceles triangle there across the
Mhm.
road.
Hmm.
It's
okay,
actually not isosceles, but it doesn't matter.
all right. So the motion, the chair has a motion. Do we move to accept this site as part of the opportunity for our housing plan? Is there a second for this site?
I'll
Second.
second that.
Okay. So roll call vote on this one to accept it and move it into the plan. Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes,
Patrick,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Josie. Thumbs up, yes. Dana,
Yes.
and the chair is yes. So this was accepted. Okay. Site, sorry, letter B is Greystone Road. This is 2.10 acres. It's one parcel directly behind the Spindrift. It's vacant, it's undeveloped. The only constraint right now is this donut hole where they have the cell tower. It is considered to be, it may or may not be expansion for the cemetery, but it is something that we've discussed in prior meetings about adjoining with the Spindrift, and likely building out that location, modernizing the Spindrift, and taking advantage of that. So the chair has a motion to move Greystone Road Area B into the housing plan. Do I have a second?
I'll second
Mike,
that.
second. Thank you, Michael, second. Okay, roll call vote. Mark,
Yes,
Michael,
Aye.
Patrick,
Yes,
Dana,
I vote yes.
Josie. Thumbs up, yes. Patty,
Yes.
and the chair is yes. So location B, Greystone Road, has been accepted and we'll move into the housing plan. Location C is the church. This is St. Thomas Aquinas Church on Nahant Road. It's noted here divided into two parcels. The parcel that we're interested in is where the rectory is located in this L-shaped location. The total location is 1.83 acres. It's private nonprofit owned by the Archdiocese. We've had previous discussions on this where the Archdiocese has had discussions with the town at possibly dividing the land, considering donating it, and some type of development opportunity here. So that's the interest. We would not be impacting the parking area or the existing church that's there. It's just this one else section here that would require some further discussion with the church, which
Except
could be an opportunity site.
this description addresses both parcels. And so to the extent that we're talking about the rectory only, we need to qualify this so that there is no confusion that would suggest that we're expecting to monkey with either the church or the parking lot. Because
So
this,
what we want to do here then, Michael, is update the description to focus on the L-shaped section parcel.
it's
Right.
one parcel, the acreage is wrong.
Okay. What's the acreage packet, Patrick? Do you
I have
know?
no idea. I'd have to look at it. It's the you're saying two parcels, including the church would be,
Yeah.
this is what this shows.
so what you're saying that the acreage addresses one of the parcels and not both?
Well, I'm saying that you're saying the church is gonna get demolished and put into housing.
No, I'm not saying
No,
that. was
nobody's
not what we
saying that.
discussed.
Well,
We-
I mean, that's what the diagram shows.
That's why
what
I
the
said we
picture
needed,
shows.
that's what I
the
said.
number of acres show. That's what the parcel number shows.
That's why I said we needed to qualify it, so there's no confusion that would
Not in the
suggest.
description, number of parcels is wrong and the acreage is wrong.
Okay, we need to fix it. That's what I said.
And may I jump in here for just a minute? In light of the problems with the way it's described, we should just consider voting up or down on the way it's described now and move on.
So the one thing to highlight is in the last section here, the discussions are preliminary and there have been no discussions that which is that the church is closing or going to be demolished. That's not what's being proposed here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
What is
So-
being proposed then?
What's being proposed is the two parcels. It's just really about the location as an opportunity site. Any further detail would come out later in discussions.
Well, I'm in agreement with Patrick that this is muddled. This is badly described to address what Michelle has just said. It seems to be inconsistent because it says the site may need to be split and plotted differently to be developed. And it seems to me that a big part of the concerns that have been expressed tonight are the concerns that people would assume that we are approving something that has adverse interest to the church itself and the parking lot, and nobody wants to do that. However, this thing as it stands is hopelessly muddled and is easily confused and easily taken or distorted to suggest that we are suggesting something adverse to the church. So I suggest we table the vote on this particular action until we can get an accurate description that distinguishes the parsonage parcel from the church and the parking lot parcel.
Okay. So do we have consensus to table this one and come back to it? I'll work with the consultants to get an updated description and proposal for this opportunity site.
Is this a secondary motion that's being offered?
Well, it's a
Um,
procedural motion. It's a motion to table the vote.
I can,
Yeah.
it's the table, I can turn it into a motion.
Okay, so moved.
Okay, so the chair motion, let me just restate it again. The chair is motioning that we table site C, the church site, until we can update the proposal here and bring it back to the committee for review. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, Michael seconds, so we're gonna do roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Josie. Thumbs up, yes. Dana,
I'm gonna vote no. I just like to vote on it now. So I'm gonna vote no.
Patty,
Yes.
and the chair is yes. Okay, so we will table this. I'll go back to the consultants and we will try to get an updated page and bring it back to the committee. Moving forward. Site D is the country club. This represents on the Nahant Road, 6.3 acres. It's one parcel, private ownership. It's recreational, partially developed. In our discussions on this, there's been various things around what the Nahant Land Company, is in talks about what they'd like to do with this location. So it's an opportunity site. It would require, various discussions later in different forums, but still is a location that could be considered. So the chair motions, do we want to consider Nahant Country Club as an opportunity site to put in the housing plan? Is there a second? Michael seconds. Okay, so roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes,
Patrick,
Yes.
Josie. Thumbs up, yes. Dana,
I vote yes.
Patty,
Yes.
here is yes. So the Nahant Country Club Site D will be included as an opportunity site in the housing plan. Okay, Bass Point. So Site E is Bass Point. It represents 8.29 acres. It's one parcel and it's privately owned. It's developed with recreational space for residents. We've talked about this because there's been discussions that this could get modernized as well, and turn it into different housing types that could be addressed in this location that could also address the affordable housing. Right now, it's mostly one bedroom apartments. And according to their stats, 38% of all renter households in Nahant live in Bass Point apartments. Any discussion on this one?
I have a question on the acreage. I was just about to look it up on the property card, but is that accurate? I thought it was closer to 6.
I don't know. I'd have to do the same thing, Patrick, and flip and look.
Yeah, I'm reading the property card is 6.292 acres.
Hold on.
Unless there's some subdivision in there, is that?
I don't know about the subdivision.
But
Yeah.
it's just a point of information. I think if that could be looked at before the next week, that would be good.
All right, I'll make a note that we check the acreage on this site. Six acres, okay. All right, so the chair motions. Do we accept Bass Point as an opportunity site in the housing plan? Do I have a second? Michael seconds, thank you. Roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes,
Patrick,
Yes,
Josie? Down, okay, Josie's a no. Dana,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
and the chair is yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving forward. Location number F, site F is the Coast Guard housing. This is a little bit more than 3 acres, one parcel. We've already had discussions on this. So I'm just going to jump right into the motion. The chair motions to include site F, the Coast Guard housing, into the housing plan. Do I have a second? Michael seconds. Roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
yes,
Patrick,
no,
Josie? Josie's a no. Dana,
I vote no.
Patty,
Yes.
and the chair is yes. Coast Guard housing will be included in the plan. Okay, thank you, everyone. We're getting through it. The next location was the Bayside, so that Range Roads, 1.31 acres. Again, private, has its constraints. We talked about this, given that the ownership at some point could be approached. This could be a location that could offer some type of affordable housing project. So the chair motions to include the Bayside location in the housing plan. Do I have a second? Michael seconds. So I'm going to go to a roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
yes,
Patrick,
yes,
Patty,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Josie. Yes, Josie's thumbs up, yes. The chair is yes. Okay, great. Okay. All right, moving on. Next location is the Knights of Columbus, which is right next to the Bayside, 1.53 acres. The chair motions to accept the Knights of Columbus into the housing plan. Do I have a second? Michael is a second. Go to roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
yes,
Patrick,
yes,
Patty,
Yes.
Dana.
No.
Dana is a no. And Josephine? No. The chair is yes. The Knights of Columbus will be accepted into the housing plan. Okay. Next location is Fox Hill Road. This is vacant, undeveloped, town-owned land consisting of half an acre. The chair motions to include Fox Hill Road location into the housing plan. Do I have a second? Michael is a second. We'll go to a roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
yes,
Patrick,
yes,
Patty,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Josie is a yes, thumbs up, and the chair is a yes. Fox Hill Road location will be included in the housing plan. Okay, that brings us to the conclusion. I know we agreed to talk about locations that were not listed. If there's someone that wants to bring a motion forward or name a location, we can do that and have a discussion.
I can make a motion to include the mixed use on Nahant Road. The commercial zone there. Is that what we were talking about, Josephine?
we're talking about 40B now, not 3A.
Right, we're
Th-
talking
this is-
40B.
This
It
is,
is-
so, go ahead, sorry.
It's the corner of Spring Road and Nahant. It's the B1 location.
so just, I think it's gonna be difficult without the map to get specific. How do we wanna take this?
Are you talking a GIS map?
Well, I mean, do we wanna just vote on the notion and then, if there's a support for including it, then we can narrow it down to which properties and which, if it's the entire B1 or an overlay part of the B1, because the B1 goes down Spring Road a bit.
I would suggest that since we're going to have the consultant refine the drawing vis-a-vis the church property to make it clear and distinguish, that we ask them to do the same process with regard to the commercial district property to properly define the constraints of it, and we can vote on both of them next time.
Yeah, I mean, it was the motion, to for the B1 properties along the Nahant Road. I mean, I thought it might be specific enough to get us started.
I'm
If that
fine
was the
with that.
case, I'll second
I mean,
that.
So
I'm
the
sorry.
motion is to include, let me just rephrase the motion and Dana confirm if this is correct. So the motion is to include the business district located on Nahant Road as included into the housing plan, with further information and detail to be provided at the next committee meeting for discussion and a subsequent vote.
Thank you,
All right,
Michelle.
close
That's
enough for
exactly what my
government
motion.
work for me. I second that motion.
Did I do okay with that?
Yes, Michelle, that's right. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So we have a second from Patrick. Thank you. We're gonna go to a roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Josie. Josie's thumbs up, yes, and the chair is yes. Okay, I'm gonna just make a note here. New ad. Okay. All right, is there anybody else that has another location that they want to discuss?
Well, seeing that we're adding, do we add Spring Road and Emerald Road?
We can. So the motion before the committee is to include Housing Authority South, which are the properties on Spring Road and Emmer Road, to be included in the housing plan. The chair is asking for a second. We have a second from Michael.
Further discussion?
Further discussion is fine. So on this location, we've talked previously, when it was first identified, the opportunity to potentially modernize and expand those locations. Their existing locations, historically, they were known as veterans housing, and then they've become public housing. We originally, after hearing from some residents, it was taken out of the plan, but after discussions, most recently with the consultants, we wanted to bring it into the plan. It's town-owned land, and we should be able to use our town-owned land and maximize it as much as possible to meet the affordable housing need.
Michelle, I have a question for you or for the whole committee. Is this the property on Spring Road and Emerald Road? Is this something that can be redesignated veterans housing with some set aside units for any future development on those sites?
That would only be a determination once and after, if a project was to come forward before the town, it would have to be a determination whether to identify that as veterans housing, but I can't say whether that can happen or not. We can't commit that into this plan. It would
Can I
have to be
rephrase the
something
question?
different.
Can I rephrase the question? I think, what I'd like to know also is, is that one of the things that we can do with affordable housing is give a veteran's preference? Do we determine
Yes.
that?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can give a veteran's preference. Other communities have done affordable housing projects that are doing veterans preference. I believe there's one in Swampscott that is in the planning phases right now. So that can be done, but that's only after after a location has been identified, funding has been allocated and approved, and it's gone before the town or appropriate body to make the final decision. Now, this is Nahant Housing Authority manages this property. They would have to follow the proper process, either through the state or federal governments, to have it identified as a veterans location and, obviously start the process to get funding to modernize it.
So
Can I-
even
I'd like to
even if
reply
the-
to that, please. being on the housing authority, I have only been there for a couple of months, but I can tell you that the veterans preference as currently implemented is not very effective. As far as I can, I do have the data to back this up. I've seen it with my own eyes, but just a preference within the housing authorities doesn't really go far enough, I think, in terms of addressing veteran homelessness and additional sites for veterans housing. But I asked the question about can this be veterans housing to inform my own vote about whether I want to include these properties as development opportunities within the plan. So I guess that's where I'm at. I just wanted to have some discussion about the
Yeah. My
veterans
understanding of
housing.
that, my understanding, Dana, of that designation would have to be approved through town meeting,
Okay,
but it
so it
can be-
And
requires,
but it can be done.
there's
Mark,
a,
can I just clarify, please? The so it's possible, but I mean, it's really, we're not there yet for these sites.
That's right. We'd have to have a project,
Okay.
in place to say, we have funding, we want to modernize, we have a plan. What we bring before town meeting is we want to dedicate it as veterans housing and let the town vote on that.
I would
Well,
suggest that
that doesn't really make sense to me.
It doesn't all need to be, it could be a percentage of,
Or a percentage, right?
it could be a percentage of veterans housing. And let's remember, any of these sites are going to require a town meeting vote, not
Right.
just Spring Road or Emerald Road, any of these sites are.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
So I will remind the committee, though, one of the things I sit on planning board now, and we had this brief dialogue a couple of weeks ago, is to create a bylaw for developers around preferential treatment. And so there is a process around that, so we can ensure that whatever development does happen considers preferential treatment, but there's a specific order to that, unfortunately. And so we have to
Well,
follow what the state
hold on.
guidelines is in that order.
Yeah, but that doesn't address the housing authority issue. Can the housing authority either on its own or by, town meeting vote, give a stronger veterans preference? I mean, I think that's what we're asking. Is that a procedural thing, or is that are there limitations? What are the limitations to that preference?
So I
Because
can reply to that.
I personally would support as strong a veterans preference as possible.
Patrick, I've been trying to get some answers on that, so we don't know yet, but the Massachusetts state law specifically outlines who gets preferences, and veterans have a preference, but when it really comes down to it, it's not a strong one. So if it was subject to the Massachusetts laws, it's not gonna measure up.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, whatever we do with a developer should be something we can do with the housing authority. I don't see why we wouldn't. There are certainly possible laws that apply that don't apply to 40B that don't apply to the housing authority or vice versa. But until we chase that down, I'm not sure that we have a good answer on that. To Mark's point about this, that whatever is going to have to be approved subsequent to this plan, I think maybe in this plan, I'm not sure where we have it stated, but maybe we need to state it more strongly that we support a strong veterans preference for housing.
let me suggest
I think it is addressed in the plan. If you read through this draft, MAPC does address veterans housing.
and it's addressed in the answers to the questions that were circulated in Michelle's email recently. It's a fairly complicated procedure and has more moving parts than we're going to be able to grapple with here tonight. And I would suggest that the function of this committee is, if you will, not in a good position to address the current holdings of the housing authority. And maybe Dana would be well served to take a deep dive into those materials that the consultants have given us with regard to how one gets a veteran's preference. I think probably state law allows for communities to act favorably to a veteran's preference, but it probably takes several types of actions, which will be beyond the scope of this committee. So, but would be within the power of the housing authority to look at. So I think everybody's in favor of achieving a lot of veterans preference, but it's a pretty complicated topic to deal with successfully tonight.
Well, I mean, I think, Mike, I would agree with you, but step number one is to include those properties on this opportunity sites. Because
Oh, sure.
without that, you're precluding veterans preference in those sites in the future.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I don't think it's applicable to this particular site. I think it should be really applicable to all the sites that.
Correct.
At this point, and it's really, I think to your point, Michael, that it would just be something that we would state as a goal. And I just have to take a look at it, but I think it is stated, but it's maybe not strong enough for my liking.
I agree. It needs to be town-wide, not simply as to the existing inventory of the housing authority.
Michelle,
Okay.
I guess that's the discussion.
It is. So do we move forward and include it as an opportunity site with
So moved.
later updates to follow on veterans preference?
So moved.
Dana, are you comfortable with this?
I guess I don't think we have enough information at this point. I mean, I think the idea is to decide on it as a site and then move forward, because veterans
Okay.
housing is probably not going to be on those sites. I think at this point, it's going to have
All
to
right,
be.
so let me rephrase the motion. The motion before the committee is to consider and add the Housing Authority South as an opportunity site in the housing plan. Do I have a second?
I made the motion. I can't second it.
Josie seconds it for me.
second it.
Thank you. All right, we have a second from Josie. Okay, so roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Michelle is yes. Michael,
Aye.
Josie,
Yes.
Dana.
I'm going to respectfully vote no at this point.
Okay, Patrick,
Yes.
Patty.
Yes.
Okay, so Housing Authority South, which is Spring and Emerald Road site, will be included as an opportunity site in the housing plan. Are there any other locations that folks want to add into the housing plan?
Again, I think just to be fair, whether it passes or not is irrelevant to me. I think we should consider the community center because that is owned by, again, there's going to be lots of caveats, lots of votes from the townspeople, but I think it should be identified to show really fair and very a very impartial and unbiased way of looking at what the housing possibilities are.
So the motion before the committee is to add the community center located on Valley Road as an opportunity site in the housing plan. Is there a second?
Further discussion?
Yes.
Who seconded it?
So who seconded it? And then we can discuss. With a second.
Seconded.
Mark seconded. Thank you. So for discussion. So Josie has brought forth, considering this location, given that, again, an opportunity to do something with the town-owned property that we have and see if there's, support from the town at a later date to, modernize it and consider it for affordable housing.
I'd like to urge the committee to not approve this site to be added. It has cultural activities there now, and it would open up an old, I don't want to call it a fight, but an old contentious battle about, what to do with that property. It's already been redeveloped as community space, and there are issues with parking. So I oppose the adding of the site. I'm sorry, Josephine.
No, that's fine. Let me then give you the reasons why I think we should include it. Okay. My number one goal as part of this committee is to try to conserve taxpayer funds. And I haven't heard yet a really good option for the lowest option to convert something. I absolutely agree that the town needs a community center. I think there are other opportunities within the town to do that. So, and we can go into that in another day. But I think it's very important that it be considered because it is a town property. There's the school, there's the town hall, there's a lot of other opportunities that may actually be more. I know that there was a fight earlier before, I get it, but I think that that building has a lot of possibilities. And if we are pressed up against a wall and we do not have developers that will fund enough, that I want to be able to have one low cost option to achieve this goal. That's the only reason why I would include it. Again, it would have to be by the town. Everybody has to be in agreement. There has to be another place for those wonderful benefits and organizations to go, but I don't want it not included for consideration.
I agree
Anybody
with
else?
Dana. I agree with Dana. I think the historical significance of that building is too great. It's too embedded in the minds of the townsfolk. It's the home of the Historical Society, which in full disclosure, my wife is now the president of, but I was also instrumental in the development or the saving of that property when the wrecking ball was swinging in its direction. And I think that it would create unnecessary controversy and division to consider displacing everything that's gone on there for housing when we've got plenty of other sites to be considered.
So I'll just say, like Dana, we both live in that neighborhood. I live on Ocean Street and it's just a short distance. I went to school there. I would not be able to support this. I'm concerned about the congestion in the area. When this property did come up, it was a huge challenge for a lot of residents to either go one way or the other, to consider it because that land was going to get sold for some type of a developer project. That area in the summer can get congested with residents who have their family and friends over for parking and go to the beach. Tudor Beach is just right around the corner. It does get congested now, even for the businesses that are leasing from there in the Historical Society. It would not be something I could support, unfortunately. Okay.
Let me just add, I have mixed feelings about this because in some ways I agree with Josie. To be fair and unbiased, I mean, we're talking about historical structures. There's probably not a more historical structure in town than the Tudor estate at Nahant Country Club, which we voted to put on this opportunity site. Clearly more historical than the Valley Road School. No one has more scars on their bodies than me. I'm trying to get this Valley Road to the community center to where it's at today. And I would, if it was ever brought up to town meeting, I would vote vehemently no. But again, this is a decision. These are decisions that are going to be made by the town. I have no problem with, the town is not going to vote for this. You want to put it on, I have no problem putting it on as an opportunity site. It's really not an opportunity, but I have no problem with it, to be honest with you. Because I have faith in the town. I have faith in how the town will vote on this. And if Josie thinks it's an unbiased and fair thing to do, then I have no problem with it, to be honest with you.
That's good, Mark. Thank you. Okay, are we ready to go to a vote?
Yes.
Okay. Patrick? You're on mute.
No.
Dana?
I vote no to add that Valley Road site.
Josie?
Well, I vote yes, but at least we tried.
Patty?
I vote no.
Michael?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
And the chair votes no. So it fails. I'm sorry, Josie.
It's okay. I just felt like trying to
I
be as
know.
unbiased as possible.
Nope, and that's fine. And
You know, there's
and
no
you're doing
water
the right thing.
issues. There's no water issues, etc. So I felt
Yep.
it needed to come up.
Nope, you're doing the right thing, challenging us and bringing this to the committee. So
And I just
no
want
hard
to point out,
feelings
it's a
there.
5-year plan, right? So there's
Yep,
another
and it can
opportunity.
change.
Oh, one other thing too, point of fact, Josie, it actually is in the flood zone for the town's
Yeah.
bylaw.
Yeah, but so is like Bass Point, that's super congested, by the way.
Okay.
And so is a lot of other things, right? So
Well, that's
you know,
80% of the town. So
yeah, I know, right? It's like 80% of the
Okay.
town. So anyway, good. At least you considered it. Fair enough.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Before the committee, are there any other sites or locations we want to talk about that we would consider putting in the plan?
I have a question, Michelle.
Sure.
So I apologize if we're going to go over old territory here, but the area near the current landfill that's not on the site. I mean, it's not on the opportunity sites now. Was that something that was dropped because it was in a flood zone, or what was the problem?
You're talking about the dump?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we dropped it. We just, because of the location and also possible work down in that area with fixing the water and the sewer issues going on, and it just didn't make sense to include it.
Okay, I'm ready to move on. I don't need to talk about that.
Okay. Any other sites folks want to talk about? No?
Not to
Okay.
brainstorm at the last minute, but did we want to talk about any Little Nahant sites or anything East Point? I just, our view here is a little bit constrained,
No,
but
that's fair. So I know we've talked about Little Nahant before. There was one property, I don't know what the status is up there, whether it's, still on the market. I don't know what's going on over there. But
Talking about the Howe
Yeah.
estate?
no, not the Howe Estate. It's another one. It's the one that they had the fire and then was gifted to Habitat to Humanity, and they couldn't get a building permit for it because too much time had passed, and then the abutters bought it. They tried to get a permit. I don't think that's failed. I think they're going back to the drawing board. I don't know where it stands now. It's on Wilson Road, but that was the only the site that I could think of. But I mean, is there anything in Little Nahant that's town owned? We have
well, not
rights
town
of
owned,
ways and
but
stuff.
the only thing I was thinking was the cooperative bank site. Whether that would be a good match for mixed use redevelopment. But I don't want to necessarily put it forward at this point. I mean, I don't feel strongly about that, honestly.
No, but it's good brainstorming. And, at one point I remember the Tides was going to sell and they were going to build condos over there.
Yeah, I didn't want to
So-
say Tides out loud. That's hold it down.
I think everything is fair game. I have
Is
no
that so, Michelle?
opinion.
Everything's fair?
Everything's fair game at this point.
All right. I gotta throw something out there, and I might get booed, but we talked about East Point. What about the some of the Northeastern University property along the road there? What's that, Spouting Horn?
Can we do
On
that?
Spouting Horn.
If
but
it's
it's all
Northeast University?
It's not Northeast. Well, so Spouting Horn is privately, there's all private
Private,
homes.
no.
over there. And it would
Yeah.
be
Oh no, I
hard-
get the wrong street. But it's the street that
Vernon Street?
the Veterans Memorial, not Veterans Memorial Park, but there's a memorial park there, and
It's
the parking
Nahant
lot for
Road
Canoe
and-
Beach. Yeah, sort of
Yes, so-
adjacent to Canoe Beach.
All right, so where Veterans Memorial Park is, that's considered Nahant Road in the beginning of Swallow Cave Road.
Swallow Cave, yeah.
And so there's two house lots directly across from there. Those are privately owned properties.
Well, I thought you were talking about on the northeastern side
If
of
you're
the
talking the
road.
northeastern side, are you talking northeastern property per se?
Yes, Northeastern, yeah.
I
I mean,
could be
that's
the
as
northeastern side.
eligible as anything else. We're
That's exactly right.
already at war with them over eminent domain, so why not make it two?
Be careful. They might actually put some serious housing up there. You gotta be careful instead of like sprinkling it around all town just to annoy us. But it's fair game.
I would say it's not fair game, and
Yeah.
I would certainly vote against it. The town has overwhelmingly voted by a 2/3 vote. Over 1,200 people in the town have voted to conserve this property. And I think with that vote, I would vote no on any development in that area.
Mark, just clarification, a subcomponent of that property that they're not using on
I think
Swallow Cave.
you're talking about the vote for eminent domain, Mark?
Yeah,
That's separate.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's distant from the property outside the fence.
well, Northeastern doesn't own that property.
With the one with the bunk, the old bunker that's on Swallow Cave Road,
The Murphy
Are you
Battery.
talking about the Davis Memorial?
adjacent to the, up the street from the Davis Memorial.
If you're talking about up the street going up Swallow Cave Road on the left-hand side, Dana, part of that
Yes.
is Northeastern. The next section of that is privately owned land that's in a trust. The
Okay.
property owners recently cleared that land the last 2 years and removed out invasive species of plants and planted trees.
Mhm.
Yeah, is northeastern land there, Michelle,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah,
it's-
that's over the Edwards bunker.
Yeah, the
Edwards
other
Battery.
bunker, right.
Right, but all of that is as eligible as the Bayside is to being
Mhm.
adapted for town use. You just got to do
Mhm.
eminent domain.
Or
Yeah.
if the property owner wants to go work something with the town on doing a development.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that the northeastern land itself is zoned NR. So it's actually not contributing to our 40B requirement for land area. So, keep in mind that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good
that's
point.
true. Good point.
It just is a technical matter. But as a policy matter, the town has voted to make as a natural resource district. So that would be contrary to what town meeting had previously decided for that area. We can certainly make recommendations opposing that. I think that site is a little bit problematic, mostly if you wanted to consider construction along the, you'd have to knock down a bunker that's or build on top of it. And that would be very expensive, I think. You could certainly build around it, I think, but that's.
Yeah, but don't we isn't a natural resource area excluded from 40B development, Patrick? I feel like we've read somewhere that,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
recreational,
The
yeah,
question
We
is,
would
the
have
question
to,
is,
the town would have to rezone it and.
rezone it and do all that. Is that
Yeah.
really?
and to have two steps involved. In other words, to have the plan contemplate rezoning it from natural resource to some developable category, and then designate it as a possible development site, I think might raise some eyebrows with the
Yeah.
people at the state who review this.
But I do want to acknowledge that. So I have heard direct criticism about our not discussing that as a site, and not being thorough, because it is a sizable parcel and there's a lot of open space there that could be redeveloped potentially. But I think so. I just wanted to say thank you to Dana for raising it.
Yeah.
I won't support it, but I think it's important to talk about.
Well, there is a developable lot on what is it? Is it Vernon Street that goes from the
Vernon
church
Street.
from the
Yep.
church over to Swallow Cave Road? Yeah, there's one large vacant lot there.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think
that's
it's
a good
across
point.
from Scapin's estate. So yeah. Okay. Is there a motion to consider something such as in that area, Swallow Cave, Vernon Street, anything that we want to consider as an opportunity
Uh,
site?
I would move that the vacant lot on Vernon Street be considered.
I would
Yeah.
second that.
And that was Patty who second. Okay, great. Okay, and I just help folks orient, the vacant lot that Michael's talking about is across from the Scapins estate. It's probably coming up from Swallow to Vernon's, probably the next two houses in on the right-hand side.
How much
Okay.
acreage? How much acreage?
You hold
Does
on, I
anyone-
can tell you. I'll look it up.
Half an acre, an acre?
Mm,
Hello, are we still on?
Yep,
Yep.
yeah, we're still on.
Michelle's checking
I'm
the
on
acreage.
another- I'm on another computer looking at it.
One of the concerns that I have with beginning to target private property, as opposed to things like the church or the country club or the Bayside or the Bass Point Apartments, is getting a little bit, I don't know. I have concerns about targeting private property. I mean, certainly I would like to find a place in East Point, if we had some publicly owned property or some other areas that could be considered, but I think we start going down a sort of dangerous road when we start identifying private property, that individually owned. It's just
Well,
a
that's-
dangerous road to go down, I think.
All right, so that location, the address is 19 Vernon Street for people that want to know. And there is 0.892 acres, so it's under an acre. So probably roughly 35,000 square feet.
And if we had any indication from the current owners that they would be willing to consider this?
No
Because
idea.
I mean, Bayview's private property, there's a lot of private property around, right? But if someone has mentioned that they would be considering it, that's
I
one thing.
believe the way that property is situated, I believe the owners of that property their home sits in front of it on Nahant Road. So Nahant Road, if you look on a
No,
map
that-
and just like,
No, that's not
No?
true.
that's not true.
Well, to the extent that we're talking about private property, we've also approved the Bayside and the Knights site
Mhm.
and Bass Point.
But those are commercial properties in a sense, Michael. I think. I
Yeah, but they are
distinguish-
privately
I-
owned.
I know, but I distinguish that a little differently than, someone's private property.
And the
Just-
business district includes private
I
dwellings.
understand. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to bring up, I think it's a valid consideration from a planning perspective. That is a wealthy area and, that provides a good tax base for the town, and what kind of development would go in there? We haven't even contemplated what we would propose there. What would would that adversely impact the property tax of the town? I think we should be, just willing to discuss that as a public policy discussion. And the considerations that Mark raised about the delicacy of proposing someone's private property. I know if I heard later on that my personal property had been proposed as a redevelopment, without any notice, without any discussion, I would be probably mad.
We
at
better
least
talk to all the
concerned.
people, we better talk to all the people in the downtown business district then, because they've just been included.
Absolutely. No, and I agree with, I think we have every right to do so. This is a plan. The town has every right to rezone, areas of town the way the town meeting decides. So, we could rezone areas, within the law as we see fit. So I think it's all valid public policy.
Yeah.
And to the extent that Josie was concerned about balance of impact, this is one way to, if you will, redress the scales.
I've heard that message loud and clear also. I think that, I've heard criticism that the committee has not looked out, not looked to East Point. I think there's more understanding for Little Nahant since it's already packed in pretty well, that, there's not a lot of opportunities there. But East Point is a bit more spread out. Looking at the parcel map, I was actually surprised that parcels there's maybe a little less opportunity. I see the 36, what is it, 36? No, is it 56,000 square feet? 16 Vernon. Maybe there's a little bit more land than I was thinking. 0.84 acres. On one parcel, and the next is 0.77 acres. There's two parcels. Is that what you're seeing, Michelle?
Yeah, I do see the 16. The other one wasn't coming up though on the property map. Let me go look again. Yeah, I do have 16 in the property map, but when I go look at the GIS map, that other property is not showing. I don't know why. I see 32, but I don't know why the other one. Oh, it could be adjoined to 32. It could be adjoined to 32 Vernon Street now. That's probably why. In any event, I hear Mark's concerns. I think they're valid. I think it's good that we are discussing it again before we close this out, but I don't know if there's any opportunity sites to consider.
Why not?
I think we're looking at all the things that we know of, right? That are, I think people will see as, locations that make sense. I just don't know we've talked about East Point before, right? We've also talked about things that are exclusionary as part of 40B, recreational, natural resources. Again, we'd have to go to rezoning and all that. And again, it would go to the town to vote. I don't know if the town would vote for rezoning these areas.
It doesn't require rezoning.
No. Yeah, comprehensive permit would just require a site review, and there would be maybe planning board, a ZBA process. Also, I think.
Matter of fact, I think we should consider that site, and I think we should also consider the bank site.
The Vernon Street and the bank?
Yeah. I mean, what we decide is obviously not going to be definitive. This is creating a menu which will be subject to further assessment and evaluation by the planning board and by the selectmen and certainly by the state. But this, I think, is a way to show that we're not being blind as to those opportunities, and observing Josie's concerned about having a equality of opportunity to have the development not be concentrated in particular areas of arguably less economic affluence.
Mike, would you like to make a motion then?
Yes. I move that we consider the Vernon Street site, whatever the numbers are that Michelle has identified.
At 16 Vernon Street, it's approximately 0.892 acres. Undeveloped land.
I'll second it for discussion.
Mark, second for discussion. Okay.
Again, I'm going to oppose this because I think of all of the places that we've identified as opportunity sites, this is the only one that we go after an individual. All of the other sites we've identified are either function halls, public property, or such. And I think it's a bad precedent to set. I'm against it, and I think I don't think we're concentrating our development in any one area. If you look at the map here, it's spread out through Big Nahant quite well. I mean, if you're that concerned, find someplace in Little Nahant. Can we find some individual properties in Nahant, Little Nahant, that we should identify? Because we haven't identified Little Nahant. Should we pick something in, at random on Lennox Road or Little Nahant Road and say, your property is designated as an opportunity site just because we didn't have any other place in Little Nahant?
No, we're talking about vacant land.
I just think it's a bad precedent to set, and I'll be voting against it.
Mark, thanks for those comments. I appreciate that because I know about that vacant land, but I didn't know the ownership situation. And that'll certainly inform my vote. I would like to comment though on the development opportunities site selection. The Bass Point area seems to have a lot of development opportunities relative to its size. So just want to make that comment to the committee.
Dan, I think if you look at the Spindrift, you look at at least the rectory portion of the church and the country club, it's probably equal to the Bass Point area.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, we've already acted on
realistically-
Bass Point. We've already
Anyway.
acted on that.
Thanks. My comments are done. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion to consider,
Could I just add one thing?
yes.
Yeah, I'm a little torn on this one. I think with more information, I could go either way on this. I'm a little hesitant to vote yes at this point without, at least getting some more information and get an evaluation. I think we have gone down the road, unlike maybe throwing the bank site out as an alternative that I probably feel comfortable, even though we haven't done the same process, but given the concerns raised, which I don't think are fatal to this motion, but I have questions in my mind that would have been better answered with a little bit more time and some input from the consultants. I think they haven't necessarily, unless Michelle, I don't know if they've evaluated this site.
No, they
haven't.
So Patrick, wasn't it you who suggested we start to look toward East Point?
No, I think it's a good discussion. I think for thoroughness, I completely agree. We should talk about it. Maybe this would be a good opportunity to take the approach of the church site and table it for further discussion later.
Okay.
How do people feel about that?
I think we're gonna have more discussions, around sites for a long time. Remember, this is it's a plan, it's a roadmap. It can change over time. New information can come before, either if this committee continues or before the town. So, we need to have something. I think we have quite a bit now in terms of our discussion. But to Mark's point, this is one that's a single individual property owner, which we've not done before, so I wouldn't be supportive of it. But we could come back to it at a later date. I'd be supportive of that.
Well, why don't we come back to it at a later date? I mean, even approach the owner of the property to see if they'd be even open to the possibility.
And point of information, it looks like one of the parcels is a trust. It's not an individual owner. I mean, it looks like a family trust.
Yep. But it also gives the committee some time to look at all other properties that could be in that type of situation, right? That are privately owned, and say, is there an opportunity there? I mean, we talked about the paper road on Pond Street. That land is in a private trust. There's 4 house lots down there. I mean, I get it, it's in the wetlands, but we've got houses over in that location along the golf course that are in the wetlands. Could be developed, something could be done. We took it off, we discussed about it.
We did discuss those. And we just decided, I think the wetlands was determining factor and excluding those.
Yeah, but I mean.
So
how
our
se-
action on this is going to be that by acclamation, we're tabling my motion until next
Well,
meeting.
well,
you know,
I think the motion's been made and seconded. We need to vote on it.
You
Well,
can
like,
withdraw your
if there-
motion.
if there's a
Unless
mo- if
Michael
there's a motion-
withdraws it.
I'm sorry?
I said, unless you withdraw it, you could just withdraw it. And we,
Uh,
if-
No, I move that it be tabled until next session.
Well, first, why don't we, okay, you can do that, Mike. You can,
Yep.
that's,
that's appropriate. That's right. So we'll just table this for,
Let's
a
refer
later
to,
discussion.
let's refer to MAPC for their
Okay.
evaluation.
we will vote on tabling it.
we need to vote on tabling. He made the motion to, and,
Yeah, I think you need to vote on tabling it. Because
Okay.
there is a motion on the floor.
all right, so the motion on the floor was to add 16 Vernon Street, which has been modified to table until a later date to get more information around this opportunity site.
Was it just a secondary motion here?
It's a,
That we're-
it's a,
Table?
it's a motion that takes precedence over the existing motion. It's a
Right.
procedural motion.
So we're gonna vote on tabling the motion. This is confusing, sorry.
Yeah, we're getting a little wrapped around the axle, but I think
I know.
essentially we want
It's
to,
ordinary procedure.
You know, Michael's right.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm gonna go to a roll call vote. Patty,
Yes.
Josie,
Yes.
Dana,
This is a vote to table?
yes.
Yes.
Patrick,
yes,
Michael,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
the chair is yes. We will table this discussion on 16
So
Vernon
now
Street.
I move to consider the bank property.
The
seconded,
bank property is 0.22 acres on the Hot Road.
Right.
It is not owned by the bank. It is
Doesn't
owned
matter who
by-
owns it.
Right. But just point of information, it's not owned by the bank. It's in an LLC. All right, as Michael has a motion, do we have a second on Michael's motion?
seconded.
Patrick's a second. Okay, any further discussion, or we can go to a roll call vote? All right, roll call vote. Patty,
Yes.
Josie,
Yes.
Dana,
No.
Patrick,
Yes,
Michael,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
the chair's a no. Okay. So, we'll add the bank property as an opportunity site.
That's close to Little Nahant.
It's in Little Nahant.
I know. So at least say we did.
Te-
You know,
technically,
at
little.
least we're looking everywhere, right?
Okay. I have 8:11. Are there any other sites that folks want to talk about, or have we exhausted this discussion?
I don't know if the discussion's exhausted, but I am.
Mark, you're enjoying your wine over there. I'm a little bit jealous right now, so.
The what?
You're enjoying your wine over there. I'm a little bit
Yeah.
jealous right now.
Um,
right.
Unfortunately, I cannot attend next week because I do have some work travel that takes me out of the country. So I just have one quick question that I'm hopeful that we can address on the draft plan. Is it okay to proceed?
Yes, go ahead, Josie.
Okay. So the one thing that kind of jumped out at me with the housing on the Coast Guard was that there was a note that it could be publicly HUD funded. My recommendation is that recommendation for either Habitat for Humanity or HUD not be tied to a specific location. Certainly, you know, if we're trying to get, you know, money for projects for affordable housing, that's fine, but it should not be tied to a specific location. it should be across the board, just different funding opportunities. I just want to make that clear. I think if we do move forward as a community of trying to do a vote on the Coast Guard, I think there might be some folks who would be very, object to putting public funded housing next to a school. So I just want you to think about that.
So Josie, it's Michelle. When you talk about you said that in the recommendation for the Coast Guard housing, you were saying the recommendation was to also tie it to funding for HUD.
For HUD public housing. I'm not opposed to public housing. I'm not opposed to Habitat for Humanity. I think those are good funding opportunities along with private funding. But if we are going to make any recommendation for that, it should never be tied to one property. It should be tied to just a single standalone recommendation. And then after that, those things can be decided later. I know I've already heard some concerns about folks saying, are you going to put, public housing next to a grammar school? I know in this area, I've heard quite a few neighbors worried about the children. So great recommendation, no problem with it. We should look at every funding opportunity that comes our way, just not tied to one specific property.
Yeah, but that HUD recommendation doesn't mean it's public housing. It's deed restricted. That could be that.
I understand, but that's just my input. That's just
I
my
know,
input.
but the interpretation of that is multifaceted. It could be single family homes that are deed restricted, that are sold.
Yeah, and that could be, like I
And-
said, a Habitat for Humanity that's deed restricted. I
Right.
get it. I'm just
Okay.
trying to just, for clarification, it shouldn't be at any one particular site location. It should be a standalone recommendation.
Applicable to all properties, in other words.
Yes,
Okay, so your
Okay.
motion is that any such funding be applied to any properties that are eligible rather than specifically to the Coast Guard. Is that right?
yes. I would like
So
to
I
have
don't
that.
think I don't think we need a motion on this. I'm taking a note right now and putting it right into the draft. So when I do talk to MAPC, I can call out that section. It's on page 97, just above next steps. So,
Okay.
Dana, I see your hands raised.
Josephine, are you done?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Michelle, for organizing me here. I just wanted to speak directly to the committee, and maybe we can ask MAPC to work a little bit on the plan to fully develop veterans housing and the preferences and set asides and any other development opportunity for veterans housing. Veteran homelessness, as we know, is a real thing. It's a problem. I know of at least 5 veterans in this town that are on the list. I don't know their names, but I know that they exist. It's something that I'd like to have accounted for in the plan, and I'm asking for the committee to support that so that MAPC can address it more fully in the plan as written.
So
Thank
that
you.
would be a request to MAPC to have them lay out a step-by-step procedure by which our recommendations can lead to maximizing veterans housing opportunities. Is that right?
That's one way of saying it. It just could. I think that the community will benefit by a better and more fully developed analysis of veterans housing and any opportunities that we have to develop property and how they could potentially be included.
I'm just trying to put it in the form of an action item that will be most useful to us so that we can get a roadmap out of it in terms of how to make our way through the thicket of the regulations that address housing preferences.
But do we need a roadmap or a goal?
No,
like,
we
a
don't.
statement? Oh, sorry.
We need a statement, but I just want to be clear about, on if you're following along at home and you have your draft plan in front of you, page 85 starts out with the recommended strategies. There was 12 strategies that we identified. Now, just going through them, right? We talk about aging in place, which can cover veterans, right? We don't call out specifically veterans, and it's important, Dana. I'm not discounting it. I don't know what the view will be from the public by calling out a specific group. Where when we talk about aging in place, we know that covers more broadly. And I'm not trying to discount it. I think it's important. We're gonna have to work with MAPC to figure out what the appropriate messaging might be, but we can't change what we have for strategies right now. We've already agreed to these strategies. We just have to figure out how to weave in within the strategy, and it could be the aging in place, it could be another one where that veterans preference, or something that calls out like that their assistance is accounted for. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I just wanted to take those comments and I appreciate that. I guess what I'm looking for, I'm asking for the committee's support, is to have more an emphasis on addressing veterans housing in the plan. That's pretty straightforward.
So I kind of want to go back to something that Patrick said. I think it was Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, a couple of meetings ago, where we had a nice discussion about, is there really preference for Nahanters who are currently living in Nahant? And I had asked the consultant to be very clear and provide very plain English who would get priorities for public housing. I mean, I know what the answer is, but I don't believe that it has been really addressed well enough in this plan, nor has there been a good enough push to show the people of Nahant that our interests are not just veterans, but the disabled in Nahant, the elderly in Nahant, and how will they get preference for some of this affordable housing versus, others that might be on a state priority list that don't currently reside here. I don't think that there's a real good answer, to be honest with you. But when reading this draft, overwhelmingly, it really sounds as if it's really going to be for the people of Nahant. But in reality, I'm not sure that the preference will ever, except for a small margin, will ever be set in stone. And I think that we owe the townspeople that information in plain English. And this draft, it makes it seem like it's all for them, and it won't be. It won't be. Whether it's our veterans, whether it's our senior citizens, our disabled people, or our low income. What can we do to, other than the Coast Guard that has a right of return, there really isn't an emphasis on that. And so I think all of our at-risk population, not just veterans, but all of them should really be addressed in some way. I don't know how we're going to manage that, but they should be addressed.
So I spoke earlier, Josie, about how we can implement a bylaw for development that gives local preference to the hunters, but it has to follow the state process in terms of what that local preference would be. But that is through a bylaw change that we can have for developers. We don't have it right now. So should a development start, we need to have that local preference bylaw in place. And that will help.
I just reject that. I mean, I think that is one facet of it, but I don't think that's the only facet of it. We did talk about that for developers, but that is not the only question here. It's a question is also the housing authority. So I don't think we've got a good answer on these local preferences from MAPC. It's a very convoluted thing, and it would be very helpful if
I would say look at page 94, because there is a paragraph in there that speaks to local preference, and that we could apply to the state asking for 70% of housing units to be reserved for Nahant residents. If that doesn't speak specifically to the Nahant need, I don't know what does. But we have to page 94. That would only come up when we have a development.
So I don't think that addresses the question.
So what else would you suggest, Patrick?
And this is with the context of Coast Guard housing, is that right?
No, I mean,
No, all of them,
General.
all of them.
across the board. I mean, the state has limits on how much set-asides we're allowed to accomplish.
Well, that's
even-
exactly what I haven't heard exactly. Like, what can we increase the preference for
To
the
what?
Nahant Housing Authority? And
This-
is it
this-
really,
The
Michelle,
state
let
only
me-
allows up to 70% if we apply.
There are limits to preferences set by the,
Right.
and they include resident preference, veterans preference. There are state limits to those. There are thresholds to them. Those thresholds can be implemented provided there's a vote with town meeting to include them in our affordable housing plan. So I thought the draft that I read discussed that. I mean, it could be stronger if you wanted,
Yeah,
Um,
stronger.
but I think it addresses it pretty well.
Well-
I personally looked and I didn't feel that it was strong enough. So maybe that is something that we can, you know, put a website to the preferences, you know, put this down because they have a huge influx of, you know, others coming into the state that have top priority. It's not guaranteed we're going to get 70%. We can apply for it, but that doesn't mean that the state's going to do it.
All right,
So-
in the plan though, Josie, I'm sorry to interrupt you, there is an example that they did provide, so I would recommend that for not just you, I'm in the same boat because I have some things I need to put pen to paper for. If you have specific language that you want to see in the plan and specific sections of the plan to be updated, it's really important to put it in writing and get it to me so I can put this all together, get it back out to everybody to review and get it to MAPC. Because I hear lots of great ideas, but in order for this plan to be updated, I'm going to need people to start putting pen to paper and getting it down so I can get it in front of MAPC. And if things require further research, that's one thing. But the local preference piece, they provided an example and they included language. I don't know how much more stronger that can be.
again, I don't know if I'm just not communicating effectively, but my question is on existing housing and not future housing, and not through 40B development through a comprehensive
Okay, that's
permit.
different.
And isn't that, Patrick, in the hands of the housing authority and not us?
That's my question. Is that within their right? And what is it now? I mean, I think I've heard a lot of complaints that it's not effective, and
It's
Well-
under state law, Patrick.
Yes.
right. But if we can do that with future 40B comprehensive permits, can we apply that to our own housing inventory existing, you know, through the
My
housing
understanding
authority?
is no, we cannot. What the mandates are and the thresholds for the state on existing housing are move forward first. What this does is allow an opportunity for future developments and give a little bit more control back to the communities.
Yeah,
So
I'd
Michelle,
like to hear some different opinions on that, because that doesn't, you know, if that's a law that we need to get changed, I think that's important to raise with our state delegation, because that doesn't make sense that we just be stuck with what we have and not be able to change it in the future.
Patrick,
Patrick,
let me try
I
to
want,
jump in. I think the housing authority, there are criteria. There's a, Dana, you probably know by now, that there is a list that you go through: residence preference, veterans preference, disability, income. They're all qualifying events, and they put you near or ahead of other people. And those are all regulated by the state and monitored by local housing authorities. And that's how they enlist people into their projects. I think what we're talking about here is future affordable housing development opportunities and what the town can regulate through bylaws in terms of preferences. So I think they're two different things.
agree.
I certainly don't agree with that. I think this
Well,
is,
you may not agree with it, but I think that's what the law is.
well, I'm disagreeing with that. It's two different things. I mean, the Nahant Housing Authority, I've heard nothing but negative feedback about in listening to these conversations. And I think, that support would be bolstered if we could actually go and give a strong local preference to Nahanters, to veterans. I think it's critical to having support for public, subsidized housing in the future of Nahant. That's going to be, and that's the only subsidized housing that's going to be remain. These 40B developments, that's temporary subsidized housing.
I think
That's 20 years,
I
25
think
years.
everybody's in violent agreement with the objective of maximizing the allocation for veterans and for disabled, et cetera, all the categories that have been identified. I think Mark is saying that the current law governs what the housing authority is able to do. And we're not in a position to change the current law. We may be able to make provisions with regard to future development that will optimize the set-asides for those categories. Are we misunderstanding each other?
No, I just want a citation. If there's something, I want to run this to the ground. And what is the restriction that says that we can't give a stronger local preference? Where is that in state law? Because I looked, and I think I need some help on this, because where is that restriction? Where is the regulation? Where is
MAPC may be able to help us with that.
Yeah.
So Patrick, it's Michelle. Can you just send me a quick email in writing specifically what this question is that you have, and I will make sure that they review it and get back to us.
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
And
Michelle,
if they can find is that Tony? That's you, right?
Yeah, I can wait.
Oh, and
If they can
Patrick,
if they can point us to the Mass General Law, then that will clarify what we're talking about.
thanks, Michelle. Just one other thing too, Patrick, in your email, could you include a reference to the veterans housing and preference and set asides and MAPC? These are our consultants. They should be able to get that information for us and spell it out for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
So
haven't seen them do that yet.
You haven't seen them do that?
No, not enough. I don't think it's, maybe they have, but it's not strong enough and well understood in plain English.
Right,
So
agreed.
that would, yeah. And I think that's important when we're dealing with asking, voters to vote on something, right? You have to make it in plain English. And I don't feel it might be included. And I personally scrubbed it and didn't feel, and I'm in the legal profession. When I read it, I wasn't quite there yet. So I can imagine someone who just would automatically think that, a senior citizen in Nahant would get priority over a lot of other things, and they might not. So I want them to understand in clear English what the priorities are, what our restrictions are. And, they can say up to 70%, but the state can make a decision as to what the priorities they choose to have today on emergency basis and all that happy stuff. So I think there needs to be a lot more beefing up of that section so that folks really understand what we're talking about.
Thank you, Josephine. Just an interesting factoid too for the, I know this isn't a deep dive, but I did a Control F on the document, look for the word veteran, and it came out twice. So just like have a little more detail filled in the plan for veterans housing and preference and set asides, et cetera. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
thanks, Dana. Tony, I see that you're on. I think you had a comment for us.
Yeah, I think Josie's right. I think, it's obviously a big question of the public, the residents of Nahant is, what does it mean for the residents of Nahant? And I think she's right that, really kind of explaining that in plain English is important. I think what Mark is trying to say is that we're a little bit more limited as far as what type of preferences we can give when it's housing authority property, because it's dictated by state law. In conversations with MAPC, when we talked about true, residential preference, whether it be for, veterans or anything, but Nahant residents, really the only thing that they could point to where we could get stronger on that preference is in a development agreement. So you're talking about town-owned land where the town's, putting together an agreement with a developer for property to be developed for affordable housing, and we could make it stronger. I believe we can go stronger than what the housing authority is restricted to by law with a residential preference. However, we want to be clear, I think is what Josie's saying, and I think we, the committee and we owe it to the residents, is that, that doesn't mean that those units are going to be held empty until a Nahant resident comes along and is ready to rent or buy. So you really want to make that clear. It doesn't mean, that X percentage of that building is guaranteed to be Nahant residents. It means that when they become available, that if Nahant residents are ready to go and they're on the list, they're going to get preference. But if they're not, they're going to move down the list. So that has to be clear. You don't want to make it sound like a development is going to be X percent Nahant residents. That's not what preference means. And I think that's an important point that I think is what Josie's saying is lacking in the, you don't want to give the impression that it's going to be something and then it's not going to be that way in the end.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a very interesting point. Thank you for bringing that up, because I've come across that in the past too. So, it has to be town-owned land. A lot of what we're talking about is not town-owned land. It's private land, right? So then the question becomes, if you really look at, I'm just going to use the older population here in Nahant is big, right? So if they're thinking that they're going to get an over 55 community and 90% of it is going to go first to Nahanters, I don't think that is a reasonable assumption. And I fear that people think that's what's going to happen.
So we have to clarify that.
Yep.
We have to clarify that.
But you know what? I heard the consultant at a town meeting gloss over it. I asked him as a private citizen. He glossed over it and glossed over it. And I just want the people of Nahant to truly understand that anything that's under public, housing, anything that's funded is 100%, whether it's current or future, will have a lot of other priorities. And I don't feel that they have that understanding. How do we help them understand the true reality of it? I don't have the answer for it, but I think, again, how we articulate it in a meeting, how we put it into these kinds of plans is incredibly important, because we don't want town residents voting for something that they don't understand. They really have to have informed decision making. That's all I'm saying.
So is MAPC in a position to steer us to some sort of a brief tutorial upon that has to do with the mechanisms that Tony just sketched out for us? And there may be different mechanisms depending on the preference. And I don't pretend to know all about it, but the mechanisms are what they are, and there's limits to how much set aside we can arrange for veterans, for elderly, for Nahant residents, et cetera, et cetera. Those are definitely need to be well understood. It would make sense if we could get something that's already been written that we could crib from to help clarify this so that everybody understands it when they read our final finished product. Does that sound like something we could ask of the MAPC, Michelle?
I'm sorry, Michael, I had to step away for a few minutes. Can you just?
And I
repeat
think we
your
did
question?
ask, though. Michael, we asked. I asked
Oh,
twice in 2 different
Okay, well,
meetings.
so we can ask
Haven't heard it.
again. Yeah,
Yeah.
so if we haven't gotten a satisfactory answer, let's ask again. Can MAPC steer us to something that exists or write up for us a comprehensive rundown on how the preferences work, how we maximize the availability of units for veterans, for elderly, for Nahant residents, for every other category we've been talking about, and how those preferences work in practice, as illustrated by Tony's comments a minute ago.
But we're talking about
I-
preference for new development or existing units?
Either. I mean, we need to know both.
I think the answer is yes, Mike. I think we can ask MAPC to get a little bit more in depth and a little bit more clear about how that works. And I think I think we can ask them to put something together on that. I don't know what that product is going to look like at the end of the day, but
So it doesn't
don't see
matter
why
whether we know or not. We
But-
just need to know what the answer is, we may not like it, but we should know what it is, right?
yes, yep.
Right, I
Let's
mean,
not
I-
dance around. Right.
Just want to say, I think for this plan, I think that the implication is really just whether we say that there should be a stronger veterans preference in, certain types of housing. Because the only type of housing we address is future 40 comprehensive permit housing. We don't address the, current inventory. So I think that just that would allow us to include a paragraph calling for that if we agree to that.
Well, I think we should have a provision to that effect in our final plan to tell the world that that's the sense of this committee. But as Josie pointed out, there's no harm in providing to the readers of our report a tutorial on how these preferences work, so that nobody can say that there's any stone that's been left unturned, that we're doing everything that we can do, and here are the limits, and here's how it works. And then we will have satisfied any desire that anybody can ask of us.
So I just want to clarify something. This plan is to achieve our 40B compliance to the state. It is to tell the
Yes.
state how we're going to do that through the identification of opportunity sites, how we think we're going to get there. I don't think the state wants to hear a regurgitation of local preference of existing laws that are already in place.
Okay, then we put it in a separate standalone side-by-side
I mean,
document
it could
that's
be just an
equally available.
appendix in the plan that benefits a
Yeah.
reader, particularly a reader of the town. Can we agree to that? Because
So let me just ask a question, okay? Only because I've seen this done before. I'm not going to tell you where it was because it doesn't matter, but it happened to be in Florida. Okay. I have a cousin there who's a mayor in Florida somewhere, which I won't tell you where it is. And they went through a very similar thing like this, got a lot of senior citizens involved. Everybody was on board. Guess what? They had a huge influx of folks from another country. All good. We want to take care of them. They got first preference for everything. So that town mayor turned around in that plan that was still in action, asked for a special disposition to not overburden that particular town's inventory with all of these other factors that were going out. It was a state emergency. And so it was written in their plan to ask for a special waiver, not to burden that particular area that was already burdened enough. And so there are things that we can inform the state is our intention. And then if we have to have our representatives go and get waivers, or have to understand we are a small community, we shouldn't be overburdened by state emergencies. Those are important things. And I believe we should articulate it to the state and then build upon that later on if need be. That's just, I wanted to bring that out there for you.
No, that's good. That's very good. And I think people would be appreciative, given the housing crisis that's going on in the state and some of the things we're seeing in other communities, that it hasn't come that close to us yet, right?
But it will. It may.
And it will. It may, right?
It may.
So, Michelle, I think local preferences, I mean, how to put this? I mean, I think it depends on the situation. As Tony said, if it's town-owned land, you have a development agreement, and the town votes within state law to have certain thresholds met in terms of veterans and residents, that's fine. That could be. You could also do that with a friendly 40B in a development agreement with a private developer in a friendly 40B, and have conditions in terms of the preferences. And then there are preferences that are controlled under the Nahant Housing Authority. So one of the reasons why MAPC is not addressing this specifically, because it's different from case to case. I think that's what you'll find when you talk to MAPC.
Okay, that's good, Mark. Thank you. All right,
So we're still gonna ask MAPC for the rundown that we described that we want to give to the citizens, to inform them as much as possible about how these preferences work and how they can be maximized, et cetera. Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay,
And I still would like to see much more language within the plan that kind of puts the state on notice that it's not just veterans, it's not just the disabled, but there's a real preference for Nahanters. And then at least that opens the door for later on. If our representatives need to get involved, we can go down that path.
Yep, I took that. All right. Okay, talked quite a bit, covered quite a bit. Just want to jump back to the plan for my notes. So we covered all of the opportunity sites. I wanted to just talk about the HPP goals and see if there was anything in those goals that folks had questions on or anything they wanted to talk about. I have one more, I just gotta go find it. Patty, there is a note in here on, it's in the constraint analysis on page 52. See what- There was language earlier in there, but I wanted to confirm an assumption I have. Currently, the Johnson School is not being fully utilized, correct? We have, what, 120 students there?
No, we have more than that.
More
But
than that?
you are absolutely correct. It's not 100% utilized. There's a lot of capacity.
So what's the capacity right now? Is it 40%, 60%?
That I have to find out.
Okay.
It's certainly not 60.
Okay, because the reason I ask is for whatever we have for housing opportunity sites that include like standalone deed restricted homes, right? There's a potential to increase, student enrollment. And I think one of the things they had earlier in the plan was that the capacity at the Johnson School would be insufficient. And I disagree with that statement. I made them take it out because from what I recall, there's still quite a bit of capacity there.
There's absolutely plenty of capacity.
All right. If you could just check on and come back to what we think the max capacity is for student enrollment, that will help just level set them about, like, we're not going to be building another school if we build a more affordable housing in town. And I think they were thinking that, and I can see why, but I think we know what that facility can hold, and I don't foresee that happening. I would love to see it maxed out. That would be fantastic, right?
So would I. Our only issue would just be we need more teachers, but in terms of space, we have
Exactly.
space.
Okay.
Hey, Patty, I think you can find that information. I think the addition of the school was done in 2004. And we did a capacity study on that, and those records are at the town hall.
Okay, I'll look into it further.
Okay. So just going back to the goals and strategies, did folks have any questions or comments, anything that stuck out to them that they wanted to talk about or bring a question back to MAPC? Now we've talked about the veterans and we've covered that. We've talked about local preference and some of that's in there, and we'll go back to them.
Michelle, I'm not sure we make a recommendation on this or we vote on it, but some of their recommendations relating to such things as the Housing Trust Fund, ADUs, those types of things, that we all in alignment with those recommendations.
So that's the follow-up question I have. Do we want to go through and?
It's a little late, but I mean, I didn't have any problems with them. I just wanted to know.
No, I didn't.
If other committee members were in alignment with what they were suggesting in terms of those recommendations.
The only thing that, even though I'm supportive of them, the only thing that kind of jumped out at me was when we did the survey And the folks who responded to the survey were not in favor of hiring a town planner, nor having a trust. So I'm not quite sure.
I think there was a
What-
slight majority for the trust, but it wasn't as strong, but
Right.
I think there was a majority of the respondents in favor of the trust. So I think there was strong support for ADUs. And there was a few others that
Yeah.
that I thought-
I think the town planner, there wasn't a lot of support, but you
Yeah, I
know,
agree.
if,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so that's interesting because, you know, having been on another committee, I heard, well, maybe we can get a grant to pay for that. So maybe, you know, again, the public may not have had all the information when they made it that, you know, the town would first go after grants to be able to fund those positions versus taking tax money. So, I don't think we should qualify it. The town planner, I'm not sure we need it, but just, I really like to take the voters' voice. And if the voters said that they're not in favor of it, is there anything that we could do to take it out now? And we can always amend it and put it in later after
Take-
more information comes up.
Take what out? The town part-time
town plan-
planner?
Yeah,
I
I-
thought we
I don't
agreed that
think
we
it's in
were
there.
gonna strike that recommendation.
Yeah,
I thought I
so.
saw it in there.
Hold on, I'm scanning it.
Could always be added in later when we do find funds.
I think we were
I mean, we
already in
do- they
violent
do make
agreement
a
about
reference
that.
We don't have a town planner, but there's,
I thought,
I think what
I thought I
they're-
saw a recommendation to get one.
no, what they were, the recommendation is to work with the North Shore Task Force and learn from planners around in nearby coastal communities, how they've been able to accomplish some of their housing issues.
Okay,
But there is not a recommendation here about, you know,
to get a planner. Okay,
No,
that's good. So
no,
that's confirmed.
no, yeah,
Okay.
okay. All right, I have quite a bit of homework tonight, thank you.
And I'm only gonna throw one more thing out because I won't be here next week and I did send you an email. But the thing that I'd like to also see the consultant do, and I don't feel like they've addressed it enough, is truly find comparable communities. We're being compared to these larger communities that have a lot of tax base. I'd like to see them find small inland or coastal communities that can be compared to us. And I didn't see that. You know, we didn't see Hull in there. I didn't see.
Paul is in there, so I'm
Okay,
gonna
good.
correct you, Josie.
Thank you.
In-
All right.
In the plan, in the appendix, details out the context communities that were covered. Hull was definitely one of those context communities we were benchmarked after.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they did a good job in the context community.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
right.
so Hull, Ipswich, Rockport, Marblehead, Swampscott, I think there's a few others, but let me go pull it up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
we-
just,
Hull
you
was
know,
definitely
I
in there.
want us to be compared to really small towns that do not have a large, you know, corporate or commercial base. And how are they dealing with it? That's really should be our benchmark, not larger communities that have a very different tax base.
Okay. Yeah, but Hull was definitely, we were benchmarked against them. I'm looking for it now. Yeah, here it is. Essex, Hull, Rockport, Marblehead, Ipswich, Swampscott. So definitely Essex and Rockport and Hull. We're definitely
Okay,
in
good.
line there. So.
All right,
good.
so they heard us.
Okay.
That's
Yep,
good.
they've definitely heard that.
Good.
Okay, awesome. All right, so a couple of things. We are at 8:52. I don't have any new business. Welcome, Dana. Glad to have you here and great contribution and feedback tonight. Old business, I don't have anything. I will be writing up some notes and getting them over to MAPC and hopefully get connected with them on Friday or Monday so we can get these updates and get another copy back out to the committee. So I would just ask that as soon as I get that copy out, you please review it so we're prepared for next week so we can, you know, go through it one final time and finalize it.
Next week, we meet with or without MAPC.
should be meeting with MAPC. I thought they were gonna be coming tonight too, but I might have gotten my dates messed up, so, well, I'll make sure that they're present next week's meeting, so we can go through one final review of comments. I don't have anything else before the committee. I don't know if anybody else has anything.
Move to adjourn.
Dana,
Just a quick question in terms of next steps. Michelle, do you need some language or suggestions for the plan? And I mean, I'm happy to take it on. I don't want to just, for veterans housing, I'd just like to see more of a description in there. Is that
if you have some sample language you want to just send to me, I will put it in front of MAPC and we'll figure out how to get it in where we have our housing goals and strategies, how to strengthen language around veterans preference. I'm fine with that. If it's,
All right.
A paragraph that's, 2 or 3 sentences long, that will be helpful. And I think it will help MAPC contextualize what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, and I'll make it pretty raw form so that they can,
That's
they're the
fine.
consultants. They can,
Yep.
build on it. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's great. All right. So if we have
Move
nothing
to
else
adjourn.
for the committee, we have a motion to adjourn by Michael Raworth. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Patty seconds it. Roll call vote. Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Josie,
Yes.
Dana.
Yes.
The chair is aye. We are adjourning at 8:54 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Great discussion. We'll talk next week and stay tuned to emails. I'll be sending updates.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Take
All
care.
right. Take care,
Ciao.
everybody. Bye.
Night.
Thanks to everybody.